Okay, so if you remember last time, my last video, we went through how to take apart the entire gun, right? The entire classic Army gun. We separated the lower from the upper, took out everything, whatever. In that video, I talked about the charging handle and how there was no spring back there to, there's no spring back there to tension this. So whenever I pulled it out, it just kind of stayed out, and then I'd have to click it back in. There's a spring. It's supposed to go inside the upper receiver in here, where this guy goes. So he comes in like this, and there's a spring in there. When I pull him, he's supposed to snap back into place. Well, they're inside this guy, where that spring is. It's supposed to attach to the upper receiver on a little plate with a screw. So you screw through the, let me show you, give you an example. For instance, if this were the spring, it's not, this is much shorter, but if this were the spring, you'd have a little loop right there, and you would put a screw through that and attach it to the upper receiver, and then the charging handle would attach to this side and it'd pull back, and then it'd spring together when you released. This version of the Classic Army, for some reason, had a glue-in version of that. So in here, you glued in that plate, and then you'd screw the screw into it. So I'm like, okay, I should just be able to go find that plate. Like, it's got to be a fairly common part to fall off. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. It doesn't exist. So I was like, fine. These things were one of the most popular airsoft guns of their time, I think, according to all the online forums. And so it should be fairly simple to find just another upper receiver, and I'll just bite the bullet and get one. So I find an Armalite M15A4 Classic Army licensed receiver set on eBay, right? Some from roughly the same time. These guys switched how they did this so many times. The version I got from this guy, not his fault, my fault completely for not knowing, I guess. This receiver is slightly different in quite a few ways from the other one. So this is what he gave me. Roughly the same look, like they look roughly the same, but there's a few key differences. One, there's pegs on the back of this upper receiver that slot into specific peg holes up here in the back of this receiver. So when I slide this together, it fits together just fine like that. But that's different than the one I had, so clearly there's some differences here. The other difference is the plate on this one for the screw for the charging handle, not glue-in. No, it is part of this guy. And this receiver set is in such crappy condition because I bought it because I just wanted that plate. I didn't care about what good condition it was, that I can't just use this receiver set for the project. I want to use mine. And so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to cut the piece of metal out of this and glue it into mine. That's what I have to do. So I am going to have to destroy this Classic Army receiver set to get the piece I need, and I just feel awful about it, but it's honestly the only way, and it's just gonna have to be like that. So whatever, we're just gonna do it. And so I'll try to get a couple shots of that, of what I'm doing to get this out, but it's gonna involve a Dremel and a whole lot of sparks. I can tell you for sure. Let's go to it. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to cut into this. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just beat up. I could theoretically use this for another project as a receiver. So I didn't cut it. However, we're not dead in the water. I started thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna have to glue something into my good receiver. I'm gonna have to glue something in there. And it's going to have to be flat enough that it can sit in there and not obstruct the gearbox sitting into the upper receiver. But it's also going to have a screw in it. And I was like, what's flat and has a hole for a screw? And I was like, mother MLOK. So this is our old handguard. This is our old handguard off of the gun, and it's got an MLOK pattern on it. It's a PTS mag pull handguard. MOE, I think, is the MOE is the style. So it has these rails on it, and on the back side of these rails, this is an MLOK design. It's just these little slots on the back side of it. are the plates that hold in, I don't know if you can see right there, I'll try to get a better view of it. Oh, you can't see it, but that's okay. Oh, there you go. So these guys right there, they look like this. So these are the back plates of these, and they have a screw in them. So you put this on the back side of an MLOK, and you put your rails in there, and your rails have a hole that has a screw go into it, and it goes like that, and it just screws in just like so. So this would be perfect. The screw's a little big, but this is a good size. I might have to shave off a little on the edge just to make it small enough to fit in there. Just slide into this this rail here, but it'll work. This'll do. It's gonna be plenty flat, and it already has a screw hole in it. We just have to shave down the screw and then skinny this guy up as well to fit in there. We should be okay. So that is instead what I'm going to do. I'll try to get some shots of that as well. But yeah, I couldn't bring myself to cut into this guy. This is perfectly fine for another project sometime. So that is probably what I'll do with it. Yeah, no worries this time. It escaped. Alright, so we're back, and I've got the grinding bit on here. The hard part about this is I don't want to like completely shave down the what do you call it? The Phillips head on this, the grooves. I don't want to strip it, but I do want to flatten it out a bit. So it's deep enough, and I think we'll be alright. Sorry, I'm hitting the camera here, so we're gonna give that a shot. And that should be perfect. So that's much flatter than it was. I'm gonna round off the edges so I don't cut myself, obviously. You can see we still have enough there for a Phillips head to bite. It's short enough, it's gonna make it into that and not much higher, so we'll test that. And there you go. Perfect. All right, so we got it. It turned out like this. We've got our little screw in here. Let's see if I can show you this. There we go. It's flattened out. Is that gonna... It doesn't want to autofocus, does it? That's okay though. There we go. It's flattened out. It's super tiny, but it works. We've got our MLOK base. Oh yeah, terrible, but you get the idea. All right, so all we're gonna do is we're gonna take this, the MLOK base, we are going to put it inside the receiver, actually with the screw in it, and then we're just gonna put the gearbox in there to see if it doesn't, to make sure that it clears it. Because otherwise, if this is too big, the gearbox won't sit right, and that's what we're trying to avoid. But if we pulled this off, this should work just fine. So make sure the screw is flush there, with just a little area for the screw to engage the spring. When we get that, slide it in there. It's a tight fit, that's good. We want it to be a tight fit. And we'll give it some extra tension. Put the gearbox in there as it would be, and we clear it. We're good. Awesome. Okay, so that means we can screw it in. We'll be totally fine, and we can actually put the glue on it. Oop, if I drop it. We're good. We're good. Okay, so we're just gonna glue this in, and we'll be good to go. Easy as that. And we don't want to use too much glue, we just want to do enough that it gets a thin layer and it's spread evenly. The key with glue is surface area, not amount, surface area. So as long as we get enough to cover the surface area, so it should probably be like, oh, just a couple drops there, a few drops there. All right, that should be good. We need to place this down there like so. Make sure that it's about the same place as the other one. We'll use our gross receiver just to eyeball where the screw is supposed to be so that the spring length is good. Cool. Easy as that. Alrighty, so we got it. I had to do a little more grinding than I had originally thought. I'll try to put that there so it autofocuses maybe. Super tiny, but it fits perfectly into this guy. And all I did is I super glued that in there. You can see it there in the base. It fit perfectly with a little bit of grinding into that spot. We're just gonna put these together with our new spring. So that spring that goes in there, put all this stuff together. The spring goes in there, hooks onto this, and then I screw it into there, and then this snaps back. We also have this guy, which also has a spring, and this is our slide. So if you'll see, there's a little tiny peg right there. That little hole has a peg in there. And so when you slide this guy, how did it go? It went like this. There we go. So this guy goes in here, and this spring goes up into that peg so that when this pulls back, it springs forward. Just like that. Also, it needs to be bent so that when it's pressed down, it kicks this guy open, the dust cover. So we're gonna do all of that. I'm just gonna do this probably, I'll move you guys closer to me, point it down, and I'll probably just do it pretty quick. There's nothing too crazy in there. It's pretty technical, hard to film, but I'll do my best. And we should be in a pretty good spot, and by the end of this, we'll have a fully functioning slide. Easy enough. All right, so normally I'd wear gloves, but I'm not gonna today. It's not that important. There's not that many small pieces we're dealing with. So slide with a spring. We got our screw for our plate that we glued into there. Still see that right up there. We've got our actual, what do you call it? Charging handle. That's super important. And then we have a replacement spring, which is going to attach to this guy, and also have the other side screwed in. And that's really it. That's all we have that we need to deal with today. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually get this spring onto the charging handle. So as we're working with it, everything goes in at one time, and all we have to do is fasten it down at the end. And I'll show you why it's important to do it that way here in a second. So these guys, you're going to put the spring on top and towards the front. You are going to slide this thing up under this like so, right? Like so. So it kind of comes in like this and hooks around, because this is what's going to pull that back and forth. And then we're going to put it in. We're going to try to make sure that as we do this, as we do this, that this guy is able to press up against this to pop it open when we pull it back. It's a super tiny lip, so the tolerance is really tight. I don't know if you can see that there a little bit. Yeah, right, that lip is what we're trying to get after. I had to bend this a little bit off camera just to make sure that it worked, so it should. But this is super thin sheet metal, like ridiculously thin. So it's gonna take a little bit of trial and error. This these little edges right here, they bend super easy. So you might even be able to do it by hand to get the right angle. All right, so we'll do that. We'll put this guy in here. All right, so that works. So check this. If we close this, we push all the pieces forward. So we have in here the slide all the way forward, the charging handle in the back is all the way forward and in. What should happen is if I pull this, yep, it should go just like that. And we have enough clearance here so we can get in and we can mess with the hop up. So that's exactly what it needs to look like. Now all we gotta do is I'm gonna put a little bit of grease in here on the slides so that this guy moves a little bit more freely. Shouldn't have to do that to the charging handle at all. You're putting so much force on that, it doesn't need to be, doesn't really need to do anything. And there's just gonna be just a touch of tension on this front spring to make sure that it stays forward a little bit. So this should be just perfect. Yeah, nothing really to it. So I'll start doing that. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm greasing along the back edge of this slide because there's a little, there we go. Yeah, back edge of the slide because there's a little lip there that it slides through right here. So there's a little lip. I'll show you how it moves. Right, so you see that lip there moving. Same thing on the front. There's a groove all the way up here. So I greased that as well. So when this moves, let's see if you can see there. See, right there. It's gonna get a little bit of help there, and that'll make this slide move a lot easier. I'm not gonna put any on the spring or anything like that. It doesn't need to have grease on it really. Now all I gotta do is in that little tiny, God, it's so hard to see, but I have to secure this spring up on this nub. To do that, I'm gonna have to use some very sharp pokey things. So I'll do that. All right, after much fighting, we have it on the nub. Just want to make sure it stays, so I'm going to press it down there a little bit. I have not found a better way to deal with that little thing, which is super annoying. I don't know if you can see that. It's right there on the front. So right there. The spring goes down onto that little nub. You can kind of see it shining there. Ooh, let's try to get that. There-ish. Well, I'm using a GoPro to film, so it's not gonna focus that well, is it? But you can kind of see there. Anyway, haven't seen a better way to deal with that. If any of you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. But so far, it's just been fighting it every time I want to put this back on. Anyway, that's that. So the last thing we got to do is just get the screw through the spring. I'm trying to do it over here for you. So we're just going to put this screw, if it wants to stay on my screwdriver here, I'm going to put it through that front thing there and into the plate that I put up. All right, just like that, we jerry-rigged that to work. Let's test it out. Boom. It works all day long. We now have a working upper receiver and bolt catch, the whole nine. So yeah, we'll move on. Next thing's probably going to be what I said was going to be video 2, which is the cylinder and piston assembly, which is going to be all this stuff. Little bore up kit and a new piston. Thanks, guys.